Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. If today's EVE Talk is maybe a bit weird, a bit slow or something like that, it's because of Path of Exile. The new league just started, so I'm just coming off a little bit of a bender, not a lot of sleep and well, not at 100% energy, but let's get started here for EVE Online. We did have a little bit of news come out as well last week, including that CCP is basically helping another company with sort of a tech demo to see about cloud-based OS and stuff like that. I think it was called EVE Online Ether Wars, where later this month they're organizing a test and they're hoping for 10,000 concurrent players to join in like sort of a massive virtual fight to see how the technology holds up. So yeah, personally I can understand people that are a bit skeptical. I'm definitely on the fence myself. I need to see results before I get hyped or anything like that about what they're planning to do there. So we'll see. I think I'll try to join, personally not 100% sure just yet, but we will see. Next to that we have the patch notes for the March release as well. Well, there's a fix in for the desync when it comes to the position that your client says you have and the server says you have, which was apparently one of the problems behind the first Komodo kill, I think it was, and yeah, it was the reason why we had the mass test, the first mass test of 2019. So good to see that we did a mass test and everything looked good, and CCP is pretty confident that they actually have a fix, and so they're putting that in the release for this month. And then of course we also have Amsterdam later this month. I'm personally curious to see what kind of information will come from there. Next up, let's move on to a quick look at the new Eden store, where there is a sale. The glittering dream skin is on sale. If you like Galente ships, this could be pretty interesting for you. You can see that we get pretty much the whole lineup. Personally, I really like the Talos because the way it's added to the Talos actually gives it symmetry, so I think that that looks really cool. And then because of its lack of symmetry, I really like the Hecate as well, with the dark wing and then the golden wing on the other side there. So yeah, there's a skin on sale. If you want to grab it on the cheap, this is your time to do so. Other than that, get some bundles, but it's just the usual stuff in the New Eden store. So let's move on to the market itself. That is of course why we are here, and yeah, I'm a bit slow today looking for the market tab. There we go, and then as always we'll start with some plex and stuff at 3 minutes. Like that. You may have already seen it on the ticker. Plex up to 3.9 million in JITA. So if we go here, 3.9 million for the sellers. Buyers are hesitating to go that much higher though. 3,735,000 ISK. They're basically stalling things a little bit. On the chart we can also see that we're still slowly going up in price, but there's a bit of hesitation to really break through the current price barrier. So is this the top forming? I mean, if you look at this from a 1 year perspective, from 3 to 3.9 million, it's definitely possible, but who knows? There is still, I think, one big variable, and that is Amsterdam. CCP might come out with some very interesting news there that might actually still prop a little bit of hype and thus perhaps a slight increase in price, but personally I'm not expecting it. We are starting to get through winter, then spring comes out, and you have the typical slide towards summer, so I think we're primed for that. Let's see if it does happen. Now we should also take a look at the player owned trade hubs, where Plex are selling for 3.8 million. And the buyers are going up a little bit, 3,750,000. So you can see in the player-owned trade hubs in perimeter, zero margin, a bit more margin in JITA 4.4. I think it does indicate a bit of hesitation in the market here, and definitely some competition, some willingness to sell at 3.8 million rather than the 3.9 million that people are trying in JITA. And I think it's going to be the turnaround, to be honest. If I were selling in JITA, I would have to look look at these volumes, they're actually pretty big when it comes to sales below 3.9 million. And so if you want to compete, I think you are going to have to go back towards 3.8, thus putting a bit of a dent in that increase. And I think we're gonna start to go down from this point on. It's a gamble, but that would be mine. So if you're looking to sell Plex, this would, I think, be the perfect time to do so. Multiple pilot train certificates, another one that is showing that this might be the case. You can see the hesitation at the tail end, and in fact a bit of a pullback from 1.87 billion down towards less than 1.8 billion. Sellers coming in at 1.8 billion and then 30 million above that, but buyers are staying well below the 1.8. And again, JITA, you can see the same pattern, right? 1872, and then the player owned trade hubs go down 185, 184, and then now 183. Someone in JITA 44 is forced to go down as well. So I think we are approaching peak prices here for Plex and a multiple pilot train certificate. Next up we have the skill extractor. That one is showing the exact opposite. All right, mixed signals here. Eve market, a bit of a weird one, because this one is actually still ending up on a high note at 430 million ISK, and it's 431 million for the sellers and then 423 for the buyers. But what I am noticing is that JITA 44 is trying 436. Then look at the last 24 hours. Competition is coming in perimeter, going down to 431, and then JITA 44 is actually following suit. So it might just be the last hurrah for skill extractors as well. I am fully expecting to start to see a pullback next week, to be honest. Next up we have the skill injectors. Large skill injectors are also cresting, almost at 900 million ISK is where the market says that's good enough, and we are slowly going down. So let's take a look at that. 899 million for the sellers, 883 million for the buyers. Does show, in my opinion, some very strong demand for skill points still. And JITA 44, 910 million. Yeah, we get the same thing here, right? Look at the last 24 hours then. They're definitely starting to go down in price a little bit, and thus I think JITA 44 will start to jump in here on the less than 890 million price range, and thus we are going to start to really move down a little bit here from 700 million to almost 900 million in 6 months. It is the why I personally do like the large scale injectors as your longer term investment and your hedge against inflation, because it's got that added spice of the skill points themselves that can be more volatile. And you can see right here, whereas for Plex the ideal time was from August to now. So far for the large scale injectors, you could have bought them in November and get on your 1 year high point just like a couple of days ago. So yeah, very interesting situation. I think let's take a look at the small scale injectors. Same hesitation at 180 million ISK, 179.9 is the first one coming in, again in the player owned trade hubs, going down for 4 million from JITA 44, and then you've got the buyers coming in at 176. There is some competition happening to try and sell the goods at these prices. Maybe a quick look at the volumes again as well, slightly going down here. For Plex, multiple pilot train certificates definitely down the drain as well. Skill extractors still doing decently okay despite its really high price, and then the injectors actually surprisingly high volumes here on these peak days. That is quite a surprise. We're left with the daily alpha injectors that are also stalling at a 1 year high point, just shy of 70 million ISK, selling for 69.5, buyers coming in at 65 million. And this, well, it's because of Plex sale. Of course, this is not showing that there's more volatility. Not a Plex sale, a very specific daily alpha injector sale that allowed us to buy in late December for 40 million, and we could now sell them at 70 million. That is not a bad trade either, of course. But yeah, I really personally like the large scale injectors. It's made up of skill extractors, which means it's made up of Plex, and it has the skill points in it as well, giving it, I think, more potential for volatility. It's a bit of a gamble, but if like right now you are you know, selling at the right time, I think that this one has the most potential as well, more than Plex, which I think has less volatility. So let's move on to the minerals, coming in at 935. like that. As always, we'll start with titanium. That has to give back the ground it won last week and is landing again on the 4.5 ISK mark. Sellers coming in at, we're gonna have to do station on this one, 4.5 ISK for the sellers. Still 2 billion and a 1.4 billion coming in, so people are still competing to try to get rid of some of their titanium buyers, or just below 4.4 ISK. So I do think we're gonna get a bit of a landing here, a bit of a slowdown. Hopefully we don't break straight through the 4.5 ISK barrier, because that's when we could go to a lower average, and that could be dangerous. But for now it does look like we're landing, so hopefully these guys manage to sell their goods, and that then we don't see too much fresh supply, giving us a second boost up where potentially we can again sell at slightly higher prices. I'm hoping for that pattern, but who knows what's gonna happen. Pyrite is holding on to 3.8 ISK, so a little bit of a pullback at the tail end, obviously after a slight comeback in the last couple of months. That doesn't last forever in the current mineral situation. 376 for the sellers, 365 for the buyers. Basically a bit of hesitation here as well. Let's hope it can stop, let's say above 3.8 or 375 or something like that, for some stability. That would be nice. Next up we have Mexalon. Also, you know, basically yo-yoing in the 55 to 60 ISK price range at the moment. Currently selling for 60, buyers coming in at 56.25, and so you've got that pattern from we're at a high point. You can see high point here, volumes, high point here, volumes, high point here, volumes, again driving the price back down. So people see, oh, almost 60 ISK, time to sell my Mexalon. They're increasing the supply too much, so we're going back down towards 55 where most of the buyers are at, and then they're stopping a little bit, volumes go down, and then up we're going back up in price because they're holding back, and then another slight sell opportunity is showing up there, and again you get a volume increase and then a decrease in price again. So that is the pattern in minerals at the moment. People are trying to sell at any little bit of profit that they can above the averages, but they're quickly squashing that with fresh supply. Isogen actually going up a little bit on must be an investment if you look at this one massive increase in volume here. So went up to 18 ISK and is now slightly back down after that. 18 ISK for the sellers, 17.85 for the buyers. Okay, whoever did that made a big investment in Isogen, probably at around 15, 16 ISK, but drove the price up quite a little bit. So nice. I do think that by next week we'll see big supplies coming in again, and we'll see that price driven back down. Next up we have Noxium, that is also going up, slight increase in volumes here as well for a couple of days, driving the price back to 313, 301 now though for the sellers, and 288 for the buyers. So here the pattern is very, very quick. People saw an opportunity to sell at 315 for their Noxium, and yeah, they're just bringing it in big enough, well, not really in big volumes, but there basically so many people are trying to get rid of that Noxium that they're cutting down on that price very, very quickly back to just above 300 ISK. It's unfortunate, but that does seem to be the mineral pattern right now. You get slight increases in price, but they never last very long. After that we have Zydrine, that is flat just above 500 ISK. There's not much to say I think on this one. 512 for the sellers, 500, 498 for the buyers, and you can still see the same pattern here. 5 million, 1 million, 3 million, 7 million, but we do have some extra big sellers here as well with 24 and 7 that are coming in. So this is just a general supply situation from Moon Mining, I think. Megasite, same thing, landing on 500 ISK. 504 for the sellers and 484 for the buyers. A bigger margin between sellers and buyers here in Megasite, so potentially a bit more of a downward spiral, but then when downward potential, but then when you look at the volumes here, this feels a bit more reasonable as well, with sellers at in the hundreds of thousands rather than 1, 2, 5, 7, 10 million for a lot of the sell orders. So here it feels a bit more reasonable, but the buyers are quite a bit lower. Kind of a strange situation. You'd expect Zydrine buyers to be way lower than that. It's not that many until we get in the same range though. After that we've got Morphite. Not good, not good. 1 year low point. in the last couple of days we're back towards 7,600, but yeah, sellers at 7,600, buyers at 7,281, so still slightly above 7,250, but this is very, very cheap, historically speaking, for a Morphite on a 1-year chart. It's also a 1-year low point, and yeah, potentially there could be a good investment in that. Keep in mind, this is tied to the Tech 2 economy, so normally Morphite doesn't need supers to die in order for them to respond. You know, a big brawl, some Tech 2 ships gone, some logistics and things like that, and you could have a big response in Morphite. I think it's more likely to see volatility in Morphite at the moment than in the other minerals, unfortunately. Next up, we have PI coming in at 1530. Like that. Let's see what the pattern says here. And yeah, broadcast nodes back down to 2 million, a bit above that, so back to a below average price, to below 2.1 million for the sellers and below 2 million for the buyers. That's actually pretty damn cheap for broadcast nodes, so at the moment you can try to grab them for less than 2 million on the buyer side. Definitely below average, and again, if you do think that CCP is gonna come out with another set of structures, then this is your time to grab the cheapest ones and prepare your investments. Construction blocks actually going up to 12,000 ISK. That is interesting. Selling for 12,300, buyers at 11,500. It's basically you know, for the year close to the average price, so that's a nice little comeback in the last 2 months or so, bottoming out at 10,000. If I'm not mistaken, I bought these for just shy of 10,000 ISK, and now you could try to sell them for 12,000 pretty easy. Buyers are in fact up to 11.5, and as a result, we're back towards an average price for construction blocks. I would say overall that is good news for the advanced PI materials and the non-fuel related PI. I would say that we're finally seeing one crawl back to an average price. Consumer electronics, you know, still 12 to 13k. Trying, you know, it would need to be in this range in my opinion to be back on its average. 12,200 for the sellers, 11,900 for the buyers. The good news I would say is here buyers are slowly forced up, and that margin has closed, so the potential to get back to 13,500 ISK is there now for consumer electronics, and you can see that we also spiked up to 14k not that long ago. So perhaps we are going to work on some normalization here. Now, coolants, definitely tied to fuels, of course, coming from a 1-year high point of 16,000 ISK. Has to give back a little bit of ground. Let's see what it's actually selling for. 15,000 is still a great price for coolants, and 14,400 to 14,300 for the buyers is not that much margin. Quite surprised to still see these that high. So this is basically, yeah, that 1-year high point that couldn't last forever. So we're back down, but still at a way above average price, a great price for coolants. Enriched uranium are continuing the slow climb of the last couple of months towards 16,000 ISK. Sellers are at 16,345 ISK, buyers at 15,500. Also 1-year high point. Really good price for enriched uranium. Volumes are starting to suffer on some days though, and for coolants, yeah, same thing. Volumes are starting to suffer here and there. So this is not gonna last forever, but this is a great time to produce and sell these fuel related PI materials. The integrity response drones actually went to less than 2.2 million here on the average price just about 10 days ago. Came back, but look at that, we're still way below 2.5 million, 2.4 for the sellers and 2.3 for the buyers, so it's still a below average price for these advanced PI materials. This was right at the start of March or at the final days of February. That is where you probably could have grabbed some pretty cheap integrity response drones. So those would be the opportunities that I would look out for if I'm looking to invest in these. Mechanical parts also went up to 13k, even above that. Had to give back some ground, but look at what we're doing now. Another spike up, 12,900 for the sellers, 12,700 for the buyers. Surprisingly low margin, but yeah, this is just shy of 13,000 ISK still, and again, A great price for something that's very easy to make. Mechanical parts, coolants, very easy to make. Gas planet, barren planet, super common, and you're getting a great price for those. Again, look at the dips in volumes though. You gotta be a little bit careful for that. Nuclear reactors next, stuck in the 90 to 100,000 price range at the moment. 98,000 for the sellers and a lack of buyers. 88,000 for the buyers. Quite obvious. So for now, this is still also, I would say, below average. Normally you'd get 100,000 disc as average, pretty easy for this particular PI material. Organic mortar applicators is actually working its way to its average for the year. Not bad, 1.1 million. So it's just above 1.1 million for the sellers and just below that for the buyers. Super narrow margin here. Basically organic mortar applicators is on its average. Robotics, yeah, actually back up above 100,000 disc on some volumes. Interesting, 102,000 for the sellers, 97,000 for the buyers. It's its average price, but it's good to see that it actually managed to come back a little bit after reaching some low points. Self-harmonizing power cores, that's an opportunity. Look at that, diving down to less than 1.9 million ISK, 1.95 for the sellers, but 1.83 for the buyers. You're probably able to put up some quick buyers for less than 1.9 million. And this is obviously a buy opportunity for those that want to gamble on another structure hype here. Look at that. Obviously 1 year low point, way below its average, and apparently with enough momentum to really break through that 1.9 million ISK barrier. Not bad. Self-harmonizing power cores, if you're looking to buy advanced PI materials, this has to be one of the opportunities that's on your radar. Superconductors staying just above 12,000 ISK, right all around its average, maybe even a touch above that, 12,900 for most sellers, one coming in at 12,500, and then just shy of 12,000 ISK for the buyers. It's an average price here. That's actually okay. Test cultures going back down to a 1 year low point, playing with 7,000 ISK, 7,500 for the sellers, 7,400 for the buyers. So some fresh buyers came in the last 24 hours, but yeah, did I say it last week? I think so, that we were coming very close to losing the 7,000 on the buyers, and I think we may just have had that happen for just a moment there. And that is where you have to keep a very close eye on the market. And so people are now trying to, yeah, they tried 7,300, 7,310, and then 7,400, 7,405. So now the competition is back, unfortunately. But I think there must have been a very small window of opportunity where you could have grabbed it for a very, very cheap price. So test cultures, 1 year low point, also something that you could invest in, I think, especially because it is so cheap, so you can invest at any scale that you want, which is why I personally like it. And these spikes, I think it's often needed for advanced PI materials. As a result, I think it's got the potential when or if a structure comes out. And finally, we get wetware mainframes, which early February went to less than 2.1 million ISK. It's now back to towards 2.3 million for the sellers and a bit above 2.2 for the buyers. So it's still below average, but yeah, not as pronounced an opportunity as a self-harmonizing power cores. This is a crazy one if you're looking to buy, and of course if you're looking to sell, look no further than the PI materials tied to fuels. Next up, we have the advanced moon materials coming in at 2320. Like that. Let's take a look at these, and interesting pullback here for the crystalline carbonites. Not yet at the low point, but how close are we to 150? Bars are below 150. That means that you could definitely try to grab some cheap crystalline carbonites. 155 for the sellers, so not a lot of margin anymore. This apparently has enough legs to bring us down to what I would definitely consider a buy opportunity here. You're buying for less than 150 if you're a little bit lucky, or right at the 150 mark. That's pretty much below the entire chart. That should be good. Ferrite carbide, we saw it last week, I think. Ferrite carbide I bought for 135. We are now selling for 139. Bars are at 136. So it's still at 1 year low point, so it's still really cheap at the moment for the ferrite carbide. But you can also see, I think, on the volumes here that some people are slowly taking their positions, and I actually like this. I like that we're not going crazy, that we're not seeing like 3-4 times the normal ones. This is also how I personally like to make my investments. Buy in small chunks, be patient enough, have enough ISK left so that you can buy other goods as well. Try to spread the risk out a little bit, and as a result here we are seeing volume increases, basically keeping the price from cratering to an even more obvious buy opportunity. And so there is some interest, but nothing too crazy. You actually have a little bit of time if you still want to buy, let's say below 140, which is still not bad if you look at this chart, of course. Next up we have the titanium carbide that is flat at 175. So here I'm not liking that because we're still too far away from the 150 mark where I would pronounce a buy opportunity. Then we have tungsten carbide that is back up to 225. That's interesting. 2 legs up to an average 225, back down now to 211 for the sellers and 200 ISK for the buyers. Obviously, unless you bought October, November, I think you gotta be on the wait and see wagon for tungsten carbide. Next up, the metamaterials then. Photonic metamaterials also under pressure a little bit. And if we now look at this 1 year chart, this could be close to a buy opportunity. How close to 15k are the buyers? Still 15,600. I'm hesitant personally. We don't need to lose that many again to get to 15.3 and then less than 15,000 ISK. But of course, it's gonna be pretty difficult to get rid of these guys without new opportunities showing up. But yeah, I'm still hesitant to jump in on the photonic metamaterials. Plasmonic metamaterials also now reaching that 1 year low point, but we had this nice little sub 17k average here. Right now 17,800 for the sellers, 17,000 for the buyers, so also a bit early I think. Then we get non-linear metamaterials that is not at the bottom, so there's no way I'm gonna try to grab that or tell you to buy that. And terahertz metamaterials had a nice comeback to 27,500 ISK, but it's not to last. We are back down, 22,000 for the sellers, 22,000 for the buyers. So obviously the sellers went up to 27k, but it just wasn't gonna last very long. You can see the competition come in then very quickly, right? 27,000, 26,000, 25.8, 25.2, 25.6, and then down to 23.7, and now back down to 22,144, and this in a matter of less than a week. So that is the unfortunate reality, of course, as well in the advanced moon materials. Any increase in price gets squashed very quickly by fresh supply. It's very difficult to actually sell at these better prices. So we would need to see some Nasdaq action for our investments, which I'm slowly making. As I've said, always, you know, don't rush into this. Don't buy crazy volumes, but slowly I am building up some investments in the advanced moon material market. And as a result, we do need something to happen in Nasdaq, I think, for these to pay off. And now we get the rest of the advanced moon materials, or did I check? Hold on, there's... Yeah, alright, that was the last one. So let's see, fermionic condensates back to a less than average price, but nothing special enough pops out here. Ferrogel, same thing, went up to 50k, which you could maybe call an average if you take this as the first half and that as a second half, but it's not to loss. That's basically what happens. We went up to 50,000 ISK, now sellers back at 44,000 ISK. You can see quite a lot of them, and here you can see what happened when the switch came in. 50k, 47k, 46k, 45k, and now down to 44k. So it's just lots of supply that is ready to take advantage of any higher price. Fullerites back down towards 900s. 866 for the buyers. Yep, definitely below the entire chart. So Fullerites could still be one of those investment opportunities if you're looking to buy in advanced moon materials. But as I've said, don't spike volumes like this, please, because that's just gonna wreak havoc. No, I like these slower burns where you actually have a little bit of time to buy at these bottom prices. Hypersynaptic fibers back up on quite a bit of a volume increase, because that's what happens then, right? You get a nice little buy opportunity that lasts a little bit, and then someone comes in with big volumes, and then we're talking 12,000 for the sellers and 11,600 for the buyers, which is yeah, unfortunately like below that average, but not where you want to buy. Nano transistors, very flat, but I prefer to see 4.5 right here on the buyers. Phenolic composites, again, tries to go back towards 2200 ISK. We're already back down to 2050. Buyers at less than 1900 ISK. That is pretty cheap still. And then we have these ceramic fibers. That's also going back down. Close to 400 are the buyers. 420, a bit early to call it here, but definitely under pressure again as well. So the advanced wood materials, well, some of them are going back down substantially and creating buy opportunities there. Next up, we have the Tech 2 ships. Let's see if that translates to some Tech 2 opportunities, because that's personally what I would prefer over advanced wood materials at the moment. Feels like that's a bit less of a gamble. Ships always do tend to spike up from time to time. So Tech 2 ships at 30.20. Okay, we've got the Aries first of all. You can see the slow pressure, right, breaking through the 27.5 million mark here at the tail end. 27.3 for the sellers, 25 million for the buyers. So you're definitely buying basically below the entire chart at the moment for the Aries. Not bad. Basilisk next, after double spike, and that's why I like the Tech 2 ships so much. We are now landing again where we landed previously. So the buyers are at 203 million, sellers at 212, and this would be the time to try and grab one, let's say below 205 million ISK, and then hope for another spike up to 300 million. It's a bit of a gamble, of course, and you can't buy 100 of them in order to really make a lot of money, but you can see the better volatility, I would say, in the Tech 2 ships. Cerberus, unfortunately, flat at 250. Bit of pressure here at the tail end though, so that is good news, I think, if you're looking for a cheap Cerberus. 249 million for the sellers, 232 for the buyers. And yeah, basically driving its price back to less than average price. We've got the Crow that is staying pretty popular apparently, despite its volumes that are not great. It's well above average for its price, well above 30 million, 33 million for the sellers and 28.6 for the buyers. That's not a bad Crow. Do I have any of those? Nope, it's thicker that I need. I do not, unfortunately, because yeah, look at that opportunity here in February. That was nice. The Guardian flat at 230, but the buyers 211. They're starting to want to drive the price back down, so their patience is not endless. 226 million for the sellers, 211 for the buyers. Starting to be a decent margin that's opening up here as well. The Heretic has been under pressure for quite a while. He's definitely selling below average. 66 million for the sellers and 41 million for the buyers. Yeah, this is one where I would also try to from time to time grab one. Perhaps even at 50 million, just put yourself right in between these two and hope that there's someone that's impatient. But this is not something that you can again gamble on with a buy order of 100 chips or something like that. Just not gonna happen. And also going to be very difficult to sell. The Hound spike, that was super interesting. Went up to 45 million actually on an average day. I was a little bit late with the Eve talk. We are still doing okay, right? 37 million for the sellers and 30 million for the buyers. But I think these are my four that I'm trying to sell. And yeah, basically people just came in with some competition on that opportunity as well. That is the reality, of course, of trading in the Tech 2 ship market, is that a lot of people are doing them. The advantage is you can do it with just a couple of ships, increasing your chances of actually grabbing a profit, but you gotta be on the ball because it moves very, very fast. Next up, we've got the Ishtar, also back under pressure, well below average at the moment, selling for 234 million, buyers at 224. That's a pretty damn cheap Ishtar. We get the Manticore, after spiking up to 35 million, goes back to its lower average, 31.5 for the sellers, 29 million for the buyers. You are buying Manticore for less than 30 million ISK, which is not bad, but the pressure is obvious again. The Munin, after reaching the 1-year low point of 220, volume increase. So some people have been buying Munins as an investment or for fleets, it's possible. 266 million for the sellers and 246 for the buyers. Puts it back at a less than average price, but definitely not its bottom. The Nemesis next went up to 30 million and is on its way back down. So 27.6 already, 27 million for the buyers. Yeah, it's just not enough for me to say that I'm gonna make a trade on this. I'm gonna wait for the Nemesis to hopefully burn back towards 35 or even 40 million on some actual action. Next up, we've got the Oneros, flat at actually an above average price here, 217, 218 for the sellers, but 196 for the buyers. So that's just a pretty big margin that's opening up. But I think it also shows that this is, for the most part, a seller's market. So you really have to try to time your buy orders right in order to grab the cheap ones. The Purifier, that's a very sharp spike from 30 million up to 44 million. Now already back down to 36 million and then 33 million for the buyers though. They have been forced up, so this was definitely a real spike as well. Not even on some massive volumes, but very interesting spike up to 40 million. And again showing how quickly the Tech 2 market moves here. That was a nice little trade that you could have made, of course, trying to sell right there. But you're not gonna sell super many Purifiers at this high range, of course. And then we've got the Saber diving down to its 1-year low point all of a sudden. 65.6 million for the sellers, 62 million for the buyers. Definitely one that you could try to grab one for as well. Both the Heretic, because of its lack of buyers right here, and then the Saber. For an interdictor, this is an opportunity. I think interdictors are the first targets in any major engagement. Then we get the Scimitar also playing with the 200 million mark, 189 in fact for the sellers and less than 200 million for the buyers is definitely at the low end as well. And then finally we get the Stiletto that's also breaking through the 30 million mark, landing at 27.5, 28 for the sellers, 27.5 for the buyers, but 255 here is gonna keep that pretty stable in my opinion. So the Tech 2 ships, very interesting. We can see the pressure bleed through from the advanced moon materials in my opinion, and yeah, those interdictors are obviously at really low points at the moment. Next up, the Tech 3 ships coming in at 36, 35. Like that. Let's take a look at these destroyers first. Of course, Confessor back down a little bit, so we can clearly see a little bit of pressure in the last month or so, but staying very reasonably in the 37.5 to 40 million range. 38.5 for the sellers, 36 million for the buyers, and well, that's up a little bit, 46, 49, 113. Okay, volumes up a little bit, still nothing too crazy, nothing the market can't handle, but obviously the reason why we have this pressure in the price here. The Heggate next, flat at 40 million. Yeah, not much to say there. 40.2 million for the sellers and 38 million for the buyers. And this is more what we've been having or seeing in the last couple of almost months, I would say. 20, 34, 50. But that's really the biggest one. So this is more than reasonable for a very stable market. No sign of oversupply there. The Jackdaw actually climbing up to a 45 to 50 million price range, 48 million for the sellers and 45 million for the buyers. And here again, we have 50, 50 and 48, but you can see that for the rest, nothing really jumps out in the volumes here. So no panic. This does look like we're still in a healthy market. And then finally we get this Vapul that's also flat above 35, 38 million for the sellers, 33 million for the buyers. They're trying to go back low again, and the volumes are not too crazy here either. So no signs of oversupply. That is not happening just yet. Perhaps we need to be a bit closer to the summer for interests to die off a little bit and to get in that oversupply situation. But right now, the tactical destroyer market to me feels pretty healthy, pretty balanced, and you know, they found their price range around 35 to 40 million for most of them. Next up, we've got the cruiser. Here is the Legion. After reaching a high point of 190 million, is landing at 180 again. 178 for the sellers, 169 for the buyers. And again here, you don't have that many of them. In fact, this would be towards the low end for the Legion, I think, in available volumes, which creates the opportunity for a spike like that. Next up, we've got the Loki, also under pressure a bit at tail end. Currently selling for 218, buyers coming in at 200 million. Again, looking at the volumes, this is not a lot of ships in the last 24 hours though. That's decent supply, 222. That's kind of weird that you would do it like that, but okay. And then what we have, in my opinion, for the Loki is, yeah, again, it's not that many of them. If a big alliance makes a move and decides that they want to buy 50 Lokis, then you are gonna get a pretty sharp spike. Then next up we've got the Proteus, very flat and actually slightly up towards 180 at the tail end here. 177 for the sellers, 160 for the buyers, and here you can clearly see that we're actually you know, lacking a bit in fresh supply for the Proteus. All of this feels like it's quite old and like we're running dry on these, but unfortunately the Proteus is so unpopular. It's the least popular Tech 3 ship, I think, at the moment, that even this cannot create volatility in the Proteus market. So I think that eventually you'll start to see some slow 1s and 2s come in, and that's actually going to be enough to stabilize the Proteus market. But it does show that across the board in the Tech 3 cruiser market, we really don't have a lot of supply, not a lot of movement either, but that unfortunately means that it could go very quickly either way, in my opinion. So the Tango actually went up to 205 for the sellers, 191 for the buyers, and again here you do have 24 because it is at least somewhat popular. The Tango itself, a great PvE ship, but for the rest there's just not that many of them. And so for the Tech 3 cruiser market, it feels like it is not supplied well enough, in my opinion, and that could go either way. We could have something blow up somewhere in nullsec and interest increase for the Tech 3 ships, which could mean that across the board all of these could spike up quite violently, or of course we could actually have production slowly ramp up, and then if demand doesn't pick up, then we could get very quickly in an oversupply situation as well, where we have to start trading at lower averages for the ships as well. So very difficult to say exactly what's going to happen here. But I must say that the low amount of availability of these ships and fresh supply, I would say, although here in the Loki this is quite reasonable, but you can also see that something happened. And I don't know, is this like a relisting? But to do a relisting between 218 and 219 and 218 million just doesn't make a lot of sense. It's kind of weird. I think that there's just so few on the market that we could be in for rough times or weird times in the cruiser market. Destroyers does seem pretty damn healthy. And then we have the extra product for the week. Someone requested munitions, so I'm not gonna do all munitions, that would just be crazy long to do, but I'm gonna look at some missiles that I might produce myself. Very interesting PvE items, of course, and we'll take a look at Tech 2 and Tech 1 of some missiles that might be interesting. So that's gonna be at 4215. So some missiles, so munition charges missiles. I think actually the light missiles are pretty popular for the Gila, of course, great PvE ship. So let's go with advanced high damage and take a quick look at Inferno, for instance. Currently selling for 113, so around 100 ISK. A bit above that is its average, but it did spike up about a month ago towards almost 200 ISK. And Inferno, I think, is thermal, so should be good for the Gila. Then we get the Mjolnir, which is not good for the Gila, and that actually also spiked up a little bit. Currently selling for around 100 ISK as well. Nova, super flat, so that one is definitely the least popular one. Well, 128 for the sellers, 100. Is it the volumes? Let's take a look at that. Less than a million, and for Inferno, yeah, 2 million. So Nova seems to be the least popular, and then we've got Scourge, that is back down to 100 million as well. 100 million, 100 ISK as well. After, well, a little bit of volatility here, but is now trading below its average. Very kind of strange one. I would say if you're looking for the opportunities, Inferno Fury missiles, Fury Light missiles do seem to know some interesting spikes that double the price now and then. So that could be interesting. For the standard light missiles, I'm going to take a quick look at the Tech 1s here, but I think that in general these will be super cheap because of the mineral situation. Yeah, buyers coming in at 7.2, sellers at 11. This is basically such a weird market that nobody is buying this straight from the market unless they're getting such a nice markup that they could, for instance, export that to other markets and try to get a profit that way. Mjolnir light missiles actually went up to 20 ISK, it's on its way back down here, but buyers are at 16 ISK here, so yeah, not great, and sellers are actually forced back down to that price very quickly as well. Here look at that, Nova light missiles, 351 for the buyers, 10 ISK, that's a nice margin of course. And then we've got the Scourge light missile, 624 for the sellers, 777 for the first seller, and obviously below average. So yeah, these are the light missiles tied, I would say, to the Gila, at least some of them, the thermal and the kinetic ones. And if you're looking for trade opportunities, then apparently the Inferno one for the Tech 2 version is interesting. The pattern that I'm seeing with the standards is that you've got no buyers, and so those that do try to buy them have such a nice markup that it could be interesting to just buy here and actually try to sell, let's say in low sec or something like that, and make some nice profit that way. Potentially you could do that with these, I think. Next up, we'll take a look at the heavy missiles. I think these are used quite a lot as well, and we'll start with the advanced one. Let's take a look at that again. Inferno Fury heavy missile, and look at that lovely spike from 400 to 600 ISK. Not that bad, 50% increase. We're on our way back down, 487 and 400 ISK for the buyers. So the buyers are basically supporting that lower end quite heavily, but again the volatility in the Inferno Fury heavy missile is quite noticeable, whereas Mjolnir much flatter at around 500 ISK on average. Nova definitely flat as well, and lacking in volumes. And then we've got the Scourge ones that also have a little bit of volatility here, but from 450 to 550, obviously it's not as good as the Inferno Fury heavy missile volatility. And then if we look at the Tech 1 versions, which are super easy and cheap to make, you get again that pressure at the tail end here. And where are those buyers at? 43.74. Not as good a margin as for the light ones, but definitely pretty low. Mjolnir also trading very, very low at probably less than 30 ISK. It's actually 40 for the sellers and 32 for the buyers. And then Nova also trading below average at the moment. Buyers coming in at less than 19 ISK. Again, that nice margin. Probably for exports. I would say that that is very likely to be for exports. And then we have a crazy spike all of a sudden in the Scourge heavy missiles because of a massive volume spike, bringing us up to 74 ISK for the sellers. But the buyers are staying below 60 ISK, which is still actually decently high. So strange one as well, but we're still mostly seeing that pattern. Inferno missiles, volatility, Tech 2 especially is very interesting. Standard missiles, you've got those potentially really nice margins on the buy orders, I think, probably for exports. Then we'll take a quick look at so we don't want to go lower, but cruise missiles, maybe. I think for PvE those are quite often used as well. So let's again take a look at the Inferno ones. Went pretty low to 450, working their way back, but we're not seeing, well, except here, June, July, you do have some nice volatility. Selling for 509, buyers at 421. Healthy margin actually. Mjolnir very flat at 500. Nova very flat at 500 as well. Trades less than 1 million units, trades about 1 million units. Yeah, that's actually pretty even for these. And then we get the Scourge, that are actually dropping to a 1-year low point, selling for 459, buyers at 353. That is super cheap and a very wide margin. That's not gonna last forever. And so the Scourge ones actually have a bit more volatility in the cruise missile Tech 2 market. And then for the standards ones, I think it takes like a little bit more to make these. So these are very flat at 150, a bit below average. Mjolnir actually trading at a normal range as well. Nova cruise missiles down to a 1-year low point all of a sudden. Oh, I should take a look at the buyers here. 115 to 143, Mjolnir 210 to 235, but then Nova 47 for the buyers, 109 for the sellers, and then Scourge 123 for the buyers, 142. So it's a little bit less pronounced in these larger missiles, but you do still have those opportunists trying to grab really cheap munitions, probably again, I think, to try and sell them in better markets, smaller markets that are willing to pay that premium just for the convenience. So definitely an interesting suggestion, but you have to understand munitions is a massive category in EVE Online. So many weapon systems, so many variations as well, for light, medium, large, XL, all of that stuff is all available, made by players. It's absolutely amazing. Of course, it's a massive market, and it's also an interesting market in my opinion for newer industrialists, because the blueprints are very cheap, and there's constant demand. Of course, munitions are fired off and then destroyed, and as a result it tends to have a bit more stability. But despite that, especially in the Tech 1, you can clearly see that the buyers are not really there, yeah, you can try to compete with the sellers, but great suggestion, but very difficult to go over the entire category without having to spend another extra hour or so on this EVE talk. So that's gonna be it, just a couple of missiles. I like the pattern there that I saw with the Fury Tech 2 missiles, showing quite a bit of volatility, and then now finding out that for the Tech 1s actually you have to have the patience. If, like me, you make him somewhere far away and then you actually bring him to the trade hub for a quick sale, do never sell those to the buyers, because those margins are just ridiculous, and those are actually trying to grab super cheap ones in order to export for other markets. I think that's what's happening there. Anyways, that's gonna be it for this EVE talk then, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.